Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1562 of our daily content grind. So, you know me here. I know a lot of people from around the world celebrating a lot of different holidays watch this channel, so I try not to bring up certain holidays, but my household is Christmas themed. So, I do have Christmas on the brain, which is next week, and that's always exciting and a fun time. However, I felt like it was a good time now to do what a kid would have done back in 1984 when Transformers first came out. I was curious because we know that Transformers was a hugely popular toy line upon its debut in 1984, so I wanted to see what it was up against in order to claim such a title. So we are going to turn to the source of all things that kids wanted back then. In fact, the source of all wants and desires for Christmas back then, the Sears catalog. See, once upon a time when you didn't have Google, Amazon, eBay, etc., you would have to get this 600-page book in the mail. I'm not kidding. It's literally, literally that thick. You're getting a War and Peace novel, and it's literally just stuff to buy. But you would get one of these, your parents would show you the toy section, and you would circle whatever that you wanted for Christmas. Now, this is a tradition dating way back. Like, even I am too young to have actually partaken in this particular method. I just kind of knew what I wanted. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of see what else was available in 1984. What else could you have gotten under the Christmas tree? Now, we're not going to concern ourselves with that left page that you see on screen now because, I don't know, the little kid stuff we're not going to be too troubled by. But we're going to start over here with the buildable bricks. Lock blocks are a very forgotten building toy that could not compete with Lego. I remember they're weird. They were like, I vaguely remember them because by the time I was looking through toy aisles, they were gone. So it's mostly just secondhand, babysitters, yard sales, that kind of thing. Yeah, but they were basically just trying to be Lego again. We look down here, we see this is a fun one. So it's an erector set, but it actually looks like Max Steel from RoboForce. And the weird thing about finding this listing, if I look over to my left on the counter, there is an erector set of the original Max Steel. It's this exact one. It's opened, which means it's actually worth less than it was brand new. This was $44.99 in 1984, which, that puts it close to like $90 in modern day inflation. Somewhere around there, 90 to 100 at this point, because it's an erector set. It's metal parts that you have to assemble. And this one was remote control on top of that. I just find it funny. I just find it interesting to discover. So, weird things like that. So let's flip through the classic Lego. The classic Lego. I don't know, I don't care like what age it is, how it looks. Lego castles are just always cool. They just always are. Like, I can just remember having these as a kid. I've had Lego sets of castles as an adult. They're great. And then you see everything else they're doing. You see like this little airport hangar kind of place. I'm actually not sure what they're going for on that. Cargo center from Legoland. Okay, so it's just storage. You would never see like a cargo center as a Lego set today. It sounds boring. We do have some vintage space sets on the left side. Always cool. The Lego space stuff was always really cool. The dragster there at the bottom is an expert builder set. Today we have modular buildings, and Technic for that kind of thing. Yeah. This is when they're doing the just basic simple sets too. Things that would eventually be replaced by Duplo, as far as it's being like for little kids. See, we're not interested in tents. We're not interested in pogo sticks and getting kids to work out. That's not fun. Screw camping. No one wants to camp unless it's Fortnite or Call of Duty, one or the other. Yeah, we're not gonna worry about these too much. The pedal cars were always so neat. I think I had a pedal car as a kid. I can vaguely remember one. My bigger memory is the fact I had a go-kart. My dad worked for an auction company that had their own race car. So he basically built me my own go-kart and then had this shell painted to look like that particular car. You know, it was it was weird. It was weird, like looking back on it now, it was weird to feel like I was shilling the company my dad worked for as a kid by driving up and down the neighborhood. But it was neat. It was neat. I think he had in mind that like maybe this would get him in good. Maybe this would be like they'll invite me to promotional stuff or something. It never happened. No, the pedal cars were cool. These predated Power Wheels. That was the 90s thing. Yeah, I mean, you see, there's some cool stuff. Like, look at this thing. I mean, look at how cool some of this stuff is. So, like, I can have, like, old school cars. I can have a truck. I can have my own motorcycle. I can have my own train. Or I can have whatever the six-wheel thing is. Because that just looks like I'm driving on the moon, which is kind of awesome. Yeah, this stuff was just fun. But this was like rich kid stuff. Like your parents had to have some pretty good money to get you something that big. Your basic remote control cars and your basic stuff. You got a monster truck. You got trucks, hot, like Thunderbird. Nothing terribly crazy. Mostly generic. And that it was always like the non-generics that were more popular. We'll see those here in a bit. We got remote control planes, which you don't really see these days. Weirdly enough, I've never, like, remote control planes these days aren't really, like, kids' toys. Like, if you see flying toys as remote control for kids, they're usually drones now. Like, kid versions of drones. You can see, these were expensive. These were expensive. Like, $200, like, $300, $400. So, yeah, you're talking, like, $800. This is the stuff that's relegated to adult hobby these days. This is absolutely not something you would get as a kid. Even back then, I don't think you would get this for a kid. And they had like high-end RC cars. I remember a neighbor had a high-end car, and it went so fast all over the place. The page on the right is the kind of stuff kids would get. You get this battery-powered thing that has its own track to curl around it, or you just lay out as much track as you can get just to make it go a long way. Or remote control tank, which has a G.I. Joe stuck in it, but it's not a Hasbro toy. This is not real. This just happens to fit. You had so many toy cars back then too. You still have like this scale of diecast car has just never gone out of style. It's always been popular with kids, so no surprise there. And they were always kept generic. Like, okay, Roadmates. You remember does anyone there even remember Roadmates? No one cares. But they were the same scale because these play sets and other toys were always designed to go along with Hot Wheels. So even if like kids were not buying Roadmates, they might still buy your track. They might still buy your collector case or your parking garage or your car carrier, because that stuff would be around when Hot Wheels were sold out. Oh, here's the great stuff. So they don't do this anymore, but you used to have toys like this here in the middle, where the idea was for you and your buddy to launch cars at the same time and see if you could knock each other off the track, actively encouraging you to break your toys. And this is, typical 80s stuff, right? This is why a lot of these toys didn't survive, because we kind of encouraged them and encouraged ourselves to blow up or crash or smash all of our toys. Meaning that a lot of them didn't survive. But look at this stuff. Some of this stuff is just cool. Some of this stuff is just really cool. Like, look, like these bridge play sets for your cars. You don't really get this anymore. Now these are not Hot Wheels. This is more along the lines of like battery-powered toy cars. Things like Rough Riders, or is that the name of them? It's been a hot minute. Yeah, Rough Riders. And that's more along the lines of what you see here on the right side. Yeah, these are just 4x4 powered, which means they had a pair of motors driving the wheels, and they just drove, not very fast, but barely anything could stop them once they got driving. And then you had things like this weird Sonic the Hedgehog level looking thing. This would have required toys that held on magnetically, which is fine. Like, you don't see that much anymore either. This was cool. This would have been so cool. Just watch a car just like slowly do a loop as if it was defying gravity. Man, we need to do that again. Bring back magnetic tracks. This is the stuff my dad got me when I was a little kid. He would get me Tonka toys because he saw that more toys were getting made of plastic and knew that like steel toys would be phased out. So he thought that the steel the die-cast toys would be way more valuable someday. So he got me Tonka toys. Well, the Tonka trucks he got me ended up being, just not really all that valuable, even in good condition. It's me as an adult who kind of made toys his thing that found out that it really doesn't matter what the toy is made out of. It's all about demand. So if there's no demand for old Tonka toys, then there's no value to old Tonka toys. And that's how it really goes. If you look over the right, this is the kind of stuff that's sold a lot more, your licensed stuff. So, you've got Offensive Car at the top. You have the A-Team van. You have Knight Rider, which we had to print Knight 2000 on the side so you could tell it apart from a normal car. This is the kind of stuff that was a lot more popular. But shows like this, like Dukes of Hazzard, A-Team, Knight Rider, they weren't meant for kids, but there was nothing in them that would be anti-kid. They weren't overly violent, not overly sexual, not too complicated to follow. It'd be something that the kid would watch alongside the adult that the show was actually made for. So that means they could cross-sell. So you end up with toys of things that you wouldn't normally expect kids' toys out of. So, interesting times. You don't really get that anymore either. If they make something for an adult show, like a Stranger Things or something, that, again, is like meant for adult viewers, but, you can get away with kids watching it too. Like, they'll do plenty of toys for it, but usually it's aimed at adult collectibles, right? So you don't really get this vibe anymore. It really didn't escape the 80s and 90s. Speaking of things that didn't escape the 80s and 90s, we've reached the slot cars. These were such a huge thing back then. Look at the crazy track on the left. Look at this thing. It looks like downtown LA, and you could set it up in your living room. Yes, this absolute chaos. And like, this was all interchangeable. Like, you could snap pieces of track together and come up with your own configurations. So this, you could just run whatever race you want. And that was the fun of it, because the cars, you could kind of speed up and slow down, but they were basically just stuck to the one slot they were plugged into on the track. So you racing a friend was more about who could control their speed around the corners and not go flying out. But you're kids, so you both held the trigger down as long as possible, and your cars just flew off at the first corner. That's what you did. That's what slot cars were. But yeah, you can see how much track that they sold. All this you could do whatever you wanted with. You could build it however you wanted. And they license these out all the time. So G.I. Joe had one. Transformers would eventually have one. Just lots and lots of slot cars that just aren't a thing anymore. Ooh, we're into the Marvel now. Trains used to be a thing too. Trains used to be something you could still sell to kids. Trains don't sell anymore. Superheroes still do. So here we go with a vintage 80s Batmobile and the Hall of Justice playset. You don't get playsets like this anymore that have like a center section to also interact with. Playsets now are basically just big clam shells that open and close. They're not even that anymore. Now they're just like facades that don't open or close anything. This was the cooler stuff. You know, and then now here you have one for Marvel as well. You get Spider-Man, I see Daredevil, Iron Man, Wolverine with a shield for some reason. Yeah, so Marvel toys were a thing. Marvel toys were a thing. Marvel toys been a thing forever. Here we go. Here's the page that interests us. So there's what you originally saw when you were looking through for Transformers. So you got some of your basic Autobots, your Trailbreaker, Sideswipe, Jazz, and then you got Megatron, Soundwave down there. And over on the left, you've got Thundercracker, Starscream, and a hilariously transformed Optimus Prime, whose chest is apparently his face. That is a miracle. That is the shot that they went with, and that's how they sold the toy, and it still was successful at retail. That's amazing. And up just above it, you've got the Gobots, who also launched in 1984, just ahead of the Transformers. And they focus here on the Super Gobots. You've got Psycho, Zemon, Baron Von Joy, Hair Fiend. So, you know, classic ones. Not a lot of little ones on display. You can see a little bit of the Renegades that are in the command center, which ironically is, you know, the Guardians base. But yeah, that's all you had for Transformers and Gobots. They were both just getting started. And their competition, here's a buildable walking robot. Okay. Okay, cool. You could program it. You can control it by individual buttons, which is neat. More A-Team stuff, including a talking Mr. T doll. And this transforming rifle, which was also kind of like vaguely GoBot as well. And then Star Wars was still a thing as well. If we could go over here first for the G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe started ahead of Transformers, so they were pretty well established in 1984. You still had some major characters working in there. I see Zartan and his little bobsled. I don't know what that is. But yeah, you got your basic vehicles. You got, you know, some of your later characters in G.I. Joe. You got that they got that thing that flipped a whole bridge over it, whatever that was. And then yeah, Star Wars was in the post Return of the Jedi. So you've got your Jabba the Hutt, your Rancor, which hey, that one actually made it to market. Max Rebo's band, the Droid Factory, the Y-Wing, the TIE Interceptor. Lots of Star Wars still a thing. We go over here, we got more collector bases. You got more collector boxes with a C-3PO there. Look at the size of that gun. The size of that toy gun. Good Lord, kid. This is relevant to me because I just had to put out a whole bunch of vintage Star Wars. I've got Forlome right here. And then, for some reason, we're jumping back to G.I. Joe on the right page. This is the big vehicle stuff. You got the Cobra Viper. You've got the Sky Striker. We've got some HISS tanks, etc. This was the stuff. This was the real G.I. Joe stuff. Look at how much you got. Look how much they made. Like, they made a ridiculous amount of vehicles for G.I. Joe. The figures that you know and love nowadays, that was just to get you to buy the vehicles. That's where the money was. Okay, we don't really care about storage devices. Masters of the Universe was another line that was well established by now. You see, we have more playsets. We have more playsets. But you can see the offerings at the time. You got Cobra Con, Buzz-Offs, Web Store is down there. But you also have Battle Armor, He-Man, and Skeletor. That was the second run for both of those characters. So He-Man was He-Man would have been the biggest competition for Transformers and thusly Gobots in 1984, just because it had been so well established by then and had already been proven to be a huge hit with kids. So that would have been the big one. And then here's Black Star, who was trying to make a run of it too with similar action figures. This actually looked cool. Like, that's actually a pretty cool looking castle set. Okay, it looks like we're getting into we're getting into like tabletop stuff, kid-size pool table, foosball, air hockey, that kind of thing. Not terribly in my interest. interactive games. We're getting into board games as well. This stuff started hitting, and this one did not last very long. So you see this thing in the middle? So yeah, like it was basically like that little screen on the right. That was not a real screen. That would basically send a roll of background across, and your mission was basically to just turn the steering wheel to make your little car move left and right to stay on the road, and then the throttle is actually what sped up or slowed down the speed of the background moving. Not the most accurate of driving experiences. I don't think there was any penalty for going off the road, for instance. But neat little toy for the time. I remember when they started doing like the VHS versions that you'd have to hook to the TV. And again, the TV didn't know where the car was. But you drove. You pretended to drive. You got a little bit more. You got weird stuff. You got toy magic kits. You got other little buildable play sets. The age of the handheld electronic toy was finally beginning. Getting into board games now. A lot of board games. And here's where we get infamous. The Coleco Gemini and the Atari 2600. Oh, also Dungeons and Dragons, to kick off that satanic panic of the 80s. Gotta love that. So what you're seeing here is the final death throes of Atari desperately trying to keep some kind of control over the market. 1983 is the year of the big video game crash, where basically Atari had lost a lot of momentum compared, with having competitors in the marketplace. Were very bullyish with their marketing tactics, which stuck a lot of retailers with a lot of product, and most of that product went unsold because Atari would let basically anyone make a game at that point, and a lot of them turned out to be absolute crap. So no one could really tell what good and bad games there were. You spent a lot of money, took a shot on it, and got something home that was half unplayable. So Atari started sinking pretty hard. In 1984, they were struggling to stay afloat. It wouldn't be much longer. They were trying to find a buyer for the entire company, and they were losing hundreds of millions of dollars. And this is in 1984 money, to be losing somewhere around the neighborhood of $300 million in a year. You're talking about close to $1 billion in losses in today's money. That's bad. It crashed so bad that the Nintendo Entertainment System had to market itself as a toy. When it came out in the US, that's what Rob was all about. It was to trick retailers into thinking they were buying a toy, not another video game system that was inevitably going to tank. But hey, they tried. But you can see the other things. ColecoVision, the Odyssey was out at the time. Yeah, just a flood of just low standard video games. And it took a few years for it to recover, but it did. Thankfully it did, and it dominates today. I think that's pretty much all the toy stuff that was in the catalog. The catalogs themselves are kind of weird in that if you go far enough through these, you'll eventually find more toys. So, like, for instance, you have like the predecessor of the Chronoformers, like the transforming watches. But that was almost counted as like a chic toy at the time because it was still like an electronic watch. You see here you have randomly another Lego set. You have more cars. So I wanted to go through the bulk of the toy section just to kind of show you what this was all about and what it was like as a kid trying to figure out what you wanted in the 80s. You'd have to flip through all 600 pages to make sure you didn't miss any toys anywhere in these selections because it was slipshot at best sometimes. But yeah, that's essentially what it was like. And that is essentially what Transformers had for competition back then. So I could keep scrolling this forever trying to find one last toy that's just somewhere off in the middle of nowhere. But I think I'll leave you with that. So that's your history lesson for the day. Thought it would be interesting to take a look and let people know who weren't there. I wasn't there even, so this is a learning experience for me. But thank you everyone for watching. I hope everyone has a good holiday regardless of what you celebrate. And as always, I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.